Another glory from the letter Y of my childhood was Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. There weren't many games that had their main character named I something, but if I had a nickel for every time, yada yada, you get the picture. Games in Australia don't have a very good history from what I hear, so it's kind of amazing that one of my favorite childhood games came out of the country where games start out with a negative rating. The entire trilogy was remade between 2016 and 2018, and when I discovered them on Steam, it was an instant purchase the moment they were put into early access. That being said, I'm playing the PC version for convenience, but I remember seeing Ty for the first time at my friend's house when I was maybe 6. Specifically, it was Ty 2, and I immediately loved the look of the game. I went with my parents to either GameStop or EB Games back when they still had stores. I don't remember which. All I know it was at our local mall, which is now closed, and that still makes me sad. I wanted to start with the first game because I wanted to see Ty from the very beginning. My dad tried to convince me to buy Ty 2 because what he said was, it's the exact same game, but better, or something to that effect. This was 20 years ago, so I don't remember the exact words, but I do remember the conversation. Ty 1 is one of the 4 defining games of my childhood. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, and Sly Cooper were pretty much my consistent go-tos. It's the game that made me upset that I'll never see a real-life thylacine someday, which is the technical term for the Tasmanian tiger. They went extinct in 1936, and while I retain hope that maybe there's some out there that are just really good at hiding, which has happened before. We thought the Victorian grassland earless dragon went extinct, but in reality it was hiding for 50 years until 2023. It's not a real dragon, it's just a little lizard. Look at its cute-ass face. But there's a good chance that the thylacine is well and truly dead. In the plot of Ty, Boss Cass is an evil cassowary who hates mammals and is actively trying to wipe them off the face of the planet in an effort to avenge his dinosaur ancestors. To do this, he attempts to steal 5 talismans from a spot on Rainbow Cliffs. I don't know the significance, I don't think it matters. 5 Tasmanian tigers with boomerangs show up and kick his ass despite the giant robot. But Cass is a sore loser and activates the backup contingency on the robot to slam dunk the funk out of the talismans, which result in a portal opening up and sucking up the 5 tigers. Before they all get sucked in, however, one of them throws a last Hail Mary boomerang and it knocks the 5 talismans out of their spots and scatters them throughout the outback. I was always under the impression that this was a more historic event that took place a really long time ago, and it resulted in all but 1 Tasmanian tiger from disappearing. I don't actually think that's the case. I don't know where I got that thought from. I'm pretty sure this actually took maybe 10 years prior to the game's events. I think it's because the person who explained this to Ty, and by extension to us, is this ghost bunyip man, which makes the story he's telling seem a lot older than it really is. The very first thing you may notice is Ty's design. It's very influenced by Sonic the Hedgehog. You can't look at this man and tell me that isn't the case. Sonic, Ty, they're basically the same animal. Trust me, I'm an animal scientist. The game has us traveling throughout various levels to collect shit, hence why I like it so much. The MacGuffins are thunder eggs, which are way shinier in this than they actually are. The game is separated into 4 zones. Technically 3, but the 4th is a boss run, so I typically count it. The goal is to collect thunder eggs to power a machine which will locate the talismans in order to undo which boss Cass has done. But Cass is also searching for the talismans. I never understood this plot point in anything that does it. Why go out of your way to collect all of the thing before the other party? Just collect a couple and wait for the other party to fuck up. Or, if they're meant to be some all-powerful super weapon of some kind, just bury the thing or chuck it into the ocean. Why bother with trying to get them all if the goal is to keep the super weapon out of evil hands? At that point, you're just putting them all in one place, ripe for the stealing. It's a little different in this case. We do actually need them to save the tigers from limbo, but it's on my mind. The theme of the first segment is fire. Not literally, but the area thunder eggs are fire thunder eggs. They're the red ones. There are also blue ones and green ones for the other 2 hubs. In reality, the theme of the first hub is to get the player familiar with the game. Get familiar with what mechanics and enemies are going to be present for the rest of the game. I think the tutorial level 2-up is one of the best tutorials ever. In the first level alone, it gives the player a clear goal. Find a second boomerang, as well as showing the player every enemy type they'll come across. Most are just frill lizards, but sometimes there are enemies that take more than one hit. Some enemies will need to be bitten to take out. Some enemies have to be bitten in the ass. It's not just a tutorial level either. It's an actual level with its own branching paths. Well, path, but we gotta start somewhere. Most mechanics we'll run into are shown in this single level alone. And if it's not shown, then it has a level of its own specifically made to teach that mechanic. As I said, the goal of 2-Up is to find a second boomerang, and they had fun with it. This thing is sticking out of a rock like the sword in the stone. Whereupon he ran with all speed to Frillneck Peak, and when he had come there, he had discovered that no one was there upon guard at the base of the peak, as had heretofore been the case, for all those who had been on guard had betaken themselves to breakfast, and the stone and the boomerang stood where he could reach them. So there, being no one to stay young Tai, he leaped upon the base of the peak, and placed his hands upon the dingle arm of the boomerang. And he bent his body and drew upon the boomerang very strongly, and lo, it came forth from the stone with wonderful smoothness and ease, and he held the boomerang in his hand, and it was his. Yes, I know it's the sword and the anvil, let me have this. 2-Up even has this thing. I don't know what it is, but it causes Tai to become this thing. I think it's a bunyip, which, according to my Google searching, is an aboriginal cryptid said to reside in swamps, billabongs, and waterways. Nice mustache. Homie's got a career in fighting fires with that look. Regardless, it only shows up one other time. I guess they didn't really know what to do with it, so they just plopped it here, and then later in development remembered, oh yeah, and plopped it in another spot. The remasters of Tai add things that weren't present in the original game as well. This game in particular added skins for the remaster of Tai on top of general upscaling and performance improvements. They added a hardcore mode which gives you only one life to beat the entire game with, and if you die at any time, the save file gets deleted. I don't remember Tai originally having a lock-on system either, so that's another thing they added to this remaster, which just makes the PC port probably the best version to have. I still have my copy on PS2 just in case anything happens. That's not going anywhere. The first hub introduces us to the primary cast. Not that there won't be other characters whom we need to get Thunder Eggs from, but I consider everyone in the Fire Hub to be the most important of the series. Save Sheila from the Frost Hub, but she'll get hers. Maury is a cockatoo. I love him. All he wants to do is sit around and watch TV, which makes sense. He's old, or at least he seems old. He's retired by Tai 3, so he's gotta be pretty up there. I always figured he's gotta be close to his 60s in bird years, whatever that equivalence is. He's the tutorial owl who shows up and explains mechanics all over 2-Up. Most of his signs can be completely ignored, which is great, because in 2-Up, he stops gameplay every 10 steps. Thankfully, that's not the case in any other level. I'd probably hate him if it were. Julius is a koala. He's the scientist who built the talisman locating device, as well as the machine that builds Tai's experimental boomerangs. Ranger Ken is a park ranger dedicated to keeping all of the animals of the outback safe. Rex and Elle are both platypuses. Platypi? I don't know. Rex teaches Tai how to swim in the Great Barrier Reef. On a side note, that thing is still dying. Climate change and agricultural runoff are hurting the poor bastard, but at least Jeff Bezos made his $250 billionth dollar. I don't know, man. I'm not a politics channel, but I'd hate to see the reef die. I'll already never see a thylacine. I don't want to be partly responsible for seeing the ocean's greatest marvel die because some fat cat can get a buck somewhere. Anyway, I have no doubt in my mind that Shazza is one of y'all's furry crushes. The boss of the fire zone is Bull. He's a bull if that wasn't obvious. There are 4 bosses in the entire game. Bull's fight is very simple. He'll charge Tai, but there are termite-infested tree trunks all over the arena. Get him to run into them to deal damage. Once he's pacified, Tai reaches into his mane and pulls out the first talisman. After collecting each talisman, Julius is able to create an elemental ring capable of getting us to the next zone. This particular boomerang is the Flamerang, which is the rang on the box art. Going into this next area is when I start to have issues with Tai. As much as I love this game, there are some stinker levels to be sure. The worst of which in the entire game, at least to me, is Snow Worries. Besides it being a snow level and having some ice physics, that's not really my issue with it. Firstly, it's the level that houses Sheila. Sheila's a koala, like Julius, but she's a mother. That's not the problem. The problem is she can't keep track of her kids to save her own life. Literally. Sorry, spoilers for Tai 2. Sheila's dead. But in Tai 1, she isn't, and she keeps losing track of all of her damn kids. She's got 8 kids that keep getting lost, and guess who has to get them back? No. Wait. Listen, losing your kids once is one thing, especially if it's from some kind of natural disaster like an avalanche. I understand, we're in a state of emergency, I'll help you find your kids. But then she goes off to let them play in a fucking forest fire in the lightning zone. What the fuck is your problem, Sheila? Also, fun fact, koalas are one of the only mammals capable of digesting eucalyptus without getting sick and dying. In fact, it's pretty much their only diet. In order to do this, they have to eat a special enzyme from the digestive tract of the mother. In other words, they're faced with a conundrum early on in their lives. Eat shit or die, little bastards. Besides Sheila, my problem with Snow Worries comes down to the layout of the level over the actual ice. It's separated into two halves. The first half sees us collecting children from piles of snow so they don't, freeze to death. The level is a valley of sorts, and the first half has us going in a downward slope with that slope being coated in ice. It's not impossible to get back up once you slide down, but it's aggravating since if you miss a child, then you have to climb all the way back up. And if you're anything like me, you'll want to collect all the opals to get the 300 opal Thunder Egg, which means you'll be going down, and then back up, and then back down because you missed some, and then back up, and then back down and up again because you missed even more because they have to be on this side somewhere, surely. And they blend in with the map a little bit because they're blue and all of the snow is everywhere. And this is only half of the map. The other half isn't great either. One of the Thunder Eggs lies on the top of this sawmill. It's owned by Boss Cass for some secret project. Another thing I have a little problem with, but we'll get there when we get there. In order to reach the top, you have to follow the log sled paths back to their source and press 3 buttons that create a platform which allow you to get to the top of the mill. When I was a kid, I loved these things. Probably for the same reason why the movie Stand By Me is fun. They're following the train tracks. We're following the log lines. Where do they go? I don't know, but it's gotta be somewhere neat, right? Once you discover where they go, the magic is lost. It's gone. Now it's just another chore that needs to be done. Follow the line, go back. Follow the second line, go back. Follow the third line, then climb the mountain. It's really just a minor gripe in an overall enjoyable game. Thankfully, if you don't care about 100%ing the entire game, you could probably get away with not collecting a few Thunder Eggs from this level. The other 2 levels are wonderful for different reasons. Bridge on the River Ty is a pleasant moonlit walk through a gorgeous billabong with music that I could see myself just sitting by a river, chewing on a stick and watching frogs and ibises. It's probably my favorite level in the entire game for that reason alone, despite Dennis. Dennis is the local rich guy. He's harmless. I bet it's all inherited, but he's not a bad guy. Just a little stupid. I would consider Dennis to be a good rich person if one exists. He's the reason why Bush Rescue has its funding. Sorry, Bush Rescue is the sequel. They form an organization dedicated to protecting the wildlife and the environment from natural disasters, and Boss Cass, because he's pretty much the Cobra Commander of this universe. The other level is Outback Safari. The entire level is riding on Bull's back as we traverse the Outback. The missions are very limited considering what we're riding, but I enjoy them. The emus were an early on vocal stem of mine and are probably part of the reason why I like to make random funny sounds. The boss of the Frosty Zone is Crikey, a cybernetic shark. He's actually just a regular shark, but Boss Cass put robot parts on him. As a child, this was about as far as I could make it. Crikey scared the shit out of me, so I never had the courage to go under the water to do what needed to be done to deal any kind of damage. The goal of the fight is to swim to the bay floor and hit some oxygen tanks to shoot them to the surface of the water. Crikey doesn't like them because they exist, so he bites the fuck out of them. Using the flamerang, we hit the tanks so they blow up. It's very simple, but I was too scared to do it when I was a kid, so I cheated. I put in a cheat code to get all of the rangs in order to see the remaining levels. But I couldn't naturally progress the story in a way that made sense to my child brain, so that's part of the reason why I don't like using cheat codes or mods that make games easier. All the more power to you if that's what you want to do. It's just not for me. No judgment. A little judgment. No judgment. That being said, when we get to the third hub, even after 20 years, it still doesn't feel real to me whenever I get here. It feels like a zone that I hadn't earned the right to enter despite having 100% of this game several times through my life, even on hardcore. Not only that, but when I say the area doesn't feel real, I mean that it doesn't feel finished. Specifically, Rex marks the spot and Beyond the Black Stump, which are 2/3 of the area. They feel like they weren't finished, with Beyond the Black Stump feeling the most unfinished. Originally, Ty was going to have 5 hubs, presumably 1 for each talisman, but due to time constraints, it was cut down to 3 hubs and the Cas Pass. That doesn't mean I don't like these areas, they just feel empty sometimes. Beyond the Black Stump has a whole area that simply doesn't fit in with the rest of the level beyond the mountain. It's nothing but a snowy wasteland with a whiteout beyond the tree line. And Rex Marks the Spot has a lot of wide open space that feels like they wanted to pad time for the game at the very end just to extend playtime a little bit. Again, that doesn't mean I dislike the levels. They're pretty fun for the most part. Rex Marks the Spot specifically is all about treasure hunting. When we spawn in, there are two paths. The first one comes from Elle from the shipwrecks telling us about Wedgwood's lost treasure. The other comes from Rex and Elle venturing into a cave, but it's being guarded by a giant octopus. Ty initially thinks the egg-legged problem is spiders, but no, it's a giant octopus, and I love his reaction realizing that his friends are insane. Side note, that's a blue-ringed octopus. They're incredibly venomous. They're also not that big in reality. They're really, really tiny. Most venomous things are, but leave it to Australia to have a giant venomous thing with more arms than what's necessary. Wedgwood's treasure hunt is a pretty fun mission to do. I love piratey shit. Sly 3's pirate level is incredible. To find Wedgwood's treasure, Elle points us to Crab Island, where we will then have to follow a set of instructions from an intercom in a treasure chest all throughout the level until the end.
If ye be searching for old Wedgwood's treasure, then an anchor-shaped rock will give ye pleasure.
I mean, alright, but I don't know what sticking a rock up my ass has to do with finding the treasure. The boss of this zone is Fluffy, which is seemingly this giant ape thing. But as it turns out, it's not actually an ape. It's a robot. Since everything robotic so far has led back to Cass, it's safe to assume that this does as well. The idea is to burn off all of the fur with the flamerangs, then melt the patch of ice it's standing on using the flame vents. Once it's sunk, we use the frosty rings to refreeze the water and trap it in place. Once we're done, a woman gets out of the head of the beast. This is Fluffy. Guys, why is the talking lizard sexy? My biggest problem with this game is its lack of context behind a lot of characters, which I think could have been fixed if they had the time to make the other two hubs. Characters oftentimes just get thrown at us with no context of who they are or why they're here. Of course, it's possible to put the puzzle pieces together, it's not hard. It's more the fact that they just show up. Sly is another example. Sly is a character in Ty, not the raccoon of the same name. Sly at least has a few scenes in which he's shown tailing Ty throughout his adventure, but there's not much explanation as to why he's helping Cass. I think that they wanted to have a shadow to Ty's Sonic, but I can't say for certain. That's for sure the dynamic I get from these two at this point in the story. The Cass Pass is the final zone and it's a straight shot to the end. One short level, a boss, and then the final encounter. The boss of the zone is a goth Batwoman. I'm not entirely sure why she's here, but she is. I also don't know why Shaz is here, but she is. The Bat Lady kidnapped Shazza because she has one of the talismans. Again, I don't know why. The end of the game feels incomplete and rushed. The fight isn't even really a fight. It's more of just navigating the area until reaching a button, shooting the button, and then a jet of steam will launch the Bat Lady into the air, which deals damage. Sly also shows up. Ty shoots him in the face, and Sly nearly falls into lava. Ty saves him. In return, Sly will give us a secret weapon to help us later. The final fight is on Cass's robot. It's basically the same robot from the intro, but now there are flamethrowers on it. The idea is to freeze them and then bite them. Once they're all gone, the path inside the robot will show up where we destroy the internal wiring. Sly shows up and turns his back on Cass, while throwing Ty a doomerang. I hate these sections in games. They stress me out because I always get turned around on which direction actually goes up, and which direction actually goes left or right. Flight controls piss me off more than regular inverted controls. I'm not a fucking pilot. Up is up, down is down, left is left, right is right. It doesn't have to be more confusing than that. Once Cass has been defeated, Ty places all of the talismans in their spot to open the portal. If we remember right, 5 tigers got sucked up. Only 2 tigers came back, which just so happened to be Ty's parents. That's really messed up. What about the other tigers? They're just gone now. I know more show up in Ty 3, Ridge is a cool guy, but I guess all of the other tigers are just dead. I get the impression that Chrome knows how to make a fun game, and they do, but they don't write stories much less than they write concepts of a story and loosely tie them together. The type of storytelling they did was more environmental and conceptual than sharing anything explicit, which I can appreciate, but I would still love more context since the story they want to share is more epic than what's presented. It's like Jak and Daxter in that way, except Jak and Daxter did it way better. That doesn't take away my love for Ty in any manner, however. The sequels also follow in Jak and Daxter's footsteps in a manner of speaking. But unlike Jak 2, Ty 2 is actually good. My name is Box. Please like and subscribe and have yourselves a wonderful day.